We should be live. Hold on, I'm checking. Good. So everybody who's joining, you see the countdown timer. I'm Daryl Prail, and we're gonna go live in about a minute and a half, give or take. So in the meantime, you're going to listen to us as we get ready here. The beauty of live streaming video, the magic behind the curtain. So there we go. I'm getting messages already saying I can hear noises. Yes, you do. That's us. So what I would suggest you do is you get into your chat session. We're going to go live here shortly. Feel free to post something if you want. In the meantime, we will start in about a minute. So stay tuned here, folks.
I can feel the tension in the air.
It's true, isn't it?
The pressure's on, Ashley. How you feeling? You all right?
Just had a cough. Looking for my mute button.
Don't crumble. don't crumble.
And this is where everybody learns what goes on in a live production. All right, so I know, again, to my fine panelists, just because we don't want to ruin what we're going to say, make sure all those things that go beep are turned off. Cell phones, iPads, smartwatches. 30 seconds. Cough. Well, I'm fighting a cough. Oh, my goodness, I'm fighting a cough. There we have it. Thanks, Ashley. I feel better now. You're so nice to me.
Cheers.
Yes. We got lots and lots of people. It's going to be fun. I think Ashley and I will just be quiet and we'll sit back and we'll just watch Steve.
Wow.
We're going live in about 5 seconds, folks. Here I am. How you doing, folks? Daryl Prail here for another session. I am looking forward to this one. And I say that every time. You know, I fully admit that I say every single time how I look forward to the conversation, but I really do, and you have to understand why I say that. All right, so I'm going to set the tone here. The reason I say that is when we set these sessions, the topics, you know, we pick the topics, and now often topics come from you with the live feedback that you send to us, asking for us to cover issues or topics or whatever it might be. So keep those coming, please. But then what we get to do is we actually get to go and seek out the industry's best, the brightest, the most influential, the most opinionated, the most successful, that physically have a take on the issues. And that's why I like it, because some of these people are my friends. Some of these people I've never talked to before, and then we get to do it live in front of you. But either way, I am just blessed to be able to spend time with these people, and I'm looking forward to bringing them to you today to get to meet them. So with that, let's see how we do. This is the first live stream we've done since our great transatlantic takedown with Daniel Disney. And if you were watching that, you knew about 30 minutes into the transatlantic takedown, what happened was the video got taken down. We got, boom, shot, done, offline. And we've talked to the folks at Vimeo who handle all of our production streaming. They've apologized. They've said it's not our fault and it should work. So we are fingers crossed, folks, that today we have a live production that goes well. But if for whatever reason we have a technical issue, not to worry, we are recording this. And within a handful of days, we will send you the link where you can physically go and watch the presentations on demand. We get a few questions we often get asked, and we go through some of the housekeeping stuff here. So some of the basics here is, yes, we're recording this, as I just said. Yes, when we send this, we will send you a copy of the slides. No, we can't hear you. Yes, we want to hear from you, and to do that, there's two ways you can do it. One is on the chat function. That's right there in front of you. Just type your messages in there, and life is great. We'll see it. And the other part is you can do it on Twitter. And to do it on Twitter, we just simply ask that you use at VanillaSoft in your actual posts, and we'll get it. It's as simple as that. How's that? Nice and easy. So that's the thing you need to know. We'll try to answer some of the questions as they come in, but we'll also answer them at the end. So that's that. Now, next up are my speakers. I just talked to you about my friends and these people that are experts. Well, let's meet them. First up is Steve Burton, and I love this shot of him. Right there, he is. It's just like he says, ugh. And what it is he's incredible. He's a speaker. He's direct. He's coming to us from the UK, so they're 5 hours ahead. So we're recording this right now at just shortly after 2 o'clock Eastern. So it's after 7 p.m. at night. He's given up his evening to spend it with us. He has over 20 years of experience in sales training, sales management. He, ladies and gentlemen, he is the only two-time and current winner of Vecima's Sales Trainer of the Year, 2016, 2018. Look at that. 2 years running. Only one. And he's also, not twice. That's not once, twice. And he's also a fellow of the Institute of Sales Management. This dude, he's smart. End of story. All right. He has worked with lots of sales folks from across the globe. He's been very successful in training young individuals with no sales experience, and that's as raw as it gets. Steve, welcome to the show, my friend.
Darryl, what an intro. Thanks very much. And I do hope to be your friend one day. Maybe you can invite me over to Canada for a Tim Hortons and a beaver tail.
I will definitely bring you to Tim Hortons for a beaver tail, or maybe I'll go over there and you can buy me a pint. So Canadians are known for coffee and Americans are known for pints. I love that.
I'm Scottish.
But you are Scottish.
A couple of them, mate.
Yeah, I know. And I love that. And I checked, folks, I want discriminating viewers to assess his collection of whiskeys behind him to tell me if it's a good collection or not. I have my opinions, but we need to know if he's actually, if he lives up to his heritage. Next up, of course, is Ashley Galliano. Now, I want you to know, up until a few weeks ago, she was not Ashley Galliano. She was Ashley Becker. And she threw me a curveball when she changed her name. And then she threw me another curveball when the second G in her name is silent. But Ashley, did I get it right?
You did it perfect.
All right. So let's learn about Ashley. She is incredibly driven and passionate about the sales profession. She manages the entire sales organization. And I love this. Get this out. This is kind of meta here. For the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals, also known as the AAISP. So here's the head of sales for the Association of Sales. Right? You see how that works? It's just so cool. So part of her job with her team is setting goals, supporting, and coaching them to be successful. She's very dynamic. You're going to love her. She is very aggressive at her sales approach. She's always about exceeding goals, but she's also about adhering to the industry's best practices. And ironically, because she is with the industry's preeminent sales association, whose members are the who's who, including, of course, VanillaSoft, founding member, that she gets exposed to this stuff all the time. So on behalf of all sales leaders everywhere in your organization and those who are not yet but will be soon, Ashley, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for getting my name correct.
I am so thrilled to do that.
And I do have to note, even though we are the American Association, we are actually a global association.
That's true. You are global. I mean, my question is, does that change? Do you become the ISP, the International Inside Sales Association?
Too many acronyms.
Oh my gosh, I'm just confused saying that. That's just painful. All right. So with that, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to advance the slide. And here we go. So that's the next slide. And we want to talk about what we're going to be covering today. So let's get right into it. What we're going to talk about is why coaching, why good coaching, and Steve will set me straight on that. Good coaching is very different, is a big deal, and why you should be doing it. And you registered, you're here for that reason. Here's the good news. It's only as hard as you make it. All right. So that's the very exciting thing. It's only as hard as you make it. The next thing is who should do the coaching. All right. So let's figure that out. Who should do the coaching? How often should you coach? Very important question to know. Next up, what's the best method to coach? Because there's different ways of doing it, folks. And finally, how does technology help you in all this? In other words, it's all about efficiencies, right? So what can we do to make ourselves a little bit easier and lighter? So the whole point here is you should leave here today knowing what you can do to boost your team's performance. That's the shtick, all right? So with that, let's advance the slide. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to bring in my two remote guests. And Steve, I'm going to say to you, when it comes to why coaching is a big deal, what's your take on that?
football coaching is massive now because people's mentalities have changed towards the workplace. People want to progress, people want to advance, people want to improve. All right. So if you're not coaching your team effectively, they're not evolving. All right. You're spending a massive amount of money in training and induction and no coaching. It's going to be a waste because you're not embedding that knowledge. One of the biggest things I'm seeing more and more in sales teams is people leaving because they're not getting effectively coached. So think about how much is it costing you to replace these people? How much is it costing to recruit these people? Or just to have underperforming reps and inside salespeople on your books for any given time? How far away is it getting you from your target? How much is it affecting your personal commission? All these things can be tracked back to ineffective coaching or no coaching or a coaching plan that's not being delivered effectively. So done correctly in line with the company's goals, it's going to get you where you need to be, and it's going to help you keep your staff, which is most important. Because if you've got a good team performing well, you're going to get close to your target. If you're losing resources through bad coaching or no attention, it's a schoolboy error as far as I'm concerned.
It's a schoolboy error. I love that. It's not just an error.
I love it.
It's a schoolboy error. All right, Ashley, so you've heard Steve's take. Let's flip it to you for a second. In your experience, your role, your reach to the community, why is good coaching such a big deal?
It is a huge deal because it really creates that culture in your workspace. I agree wholeheartedly with everything Steve said. If you're not you don't have a coaching plan, you're not working internally with your teams and understanding what they're doing and helping them along the way, that's where the attrition comes in. That's where you start losing people, and people start feeling like you don't care. They're just another number to you. So I mean, coaching is, you have to put it in place. And I'll have some different pieces where I'm very strong on coaching, and I'll probably mention that later. But you have to do it. And that's the same with training too. Training and coaching, obviously two separate things, but they both have to go hand in hand, and it has to continue through that reps progression in the company.
Now, and I'm just going to jump in here. Ashley, sorry, you mentioned the word team multiple times, and yes. I'm just going to grab that because that's sometimes how I see the sales team. People think because it's a sales team, it's no different to a sports team. Every effective sports team, every successful sports team has a good coach, has an excellent coach, right? Someone if you have a good coach who's going to work hard for you, the team's going to work hard for the coach, right? And we've seen it time and time again in the sports leagues. We've seen it time and time again, and anywhere where there's some sort of team camaraderie. And it's no different into a sales team. If you've not got a coach who's giving you attention, if you've not got a clued up coach who's going to put an effective strategy in place, your team are going to be disconnected and not invested in being successful as a team. So, I don't think it's any different to any successful sports team. I think coaching is integral to getting you over the line and getting you the win.
I love that analogy of that is every team's got a coach, because that makes it so simple, right? Because we follow our sports teams, if you're a sports fan, and we don't even think about it. Of course you have a coach. But when it comes to our own sales team, it's like an afterthought or it's a miss. Mm-hmm. So here's some interesting facts, okay? We've got the bullets on the slides here. Number one, reps want coaching. Now, that's weird, right? Because sometimes you're like, no, just let me sell. Don't distract me. Don't get in my way. I have my own style. The fact is, 9 out of 10 employees say that professional development is important or very important, and 4 in 10 specifically are asking for in-house programs. Beyond that, in this age of hot economies and lots of movement of staff, sales reps report higher levels of job satisfaction when they have great managers, and great managers do the coaching. So I guess I go back to my two good friends here. Do you guys have that same experience that reps want coaching?
100%. Can I chime in here, Steve?
You're already chiming in.
Just looking at my team alone, if anything's going to help them be better at their position, obviously, why are we in sales? We're in sales to make money. That's where you make a lot of money. And if you're coaching them to be better and guiding them how to be a better sales professional or as a team doing it together, that's how they're going to make more money. And that's their end goal a lot of times. So, it's huge. And one thing that I've seen here at the association, and we've talked to with a lot of our sales leaders, is coaching doesn't even just start with the reps. you need to start at the management level and coach your managers to be successful, and then you bring it down to the reps. Because if your managers aren't successful managers, your team's not going to succeed.
Agree. Now, you've mentioned reps want coaching. We're not just talking about reps. We're talking about inside salespeople. We're talking about lead generators, demand generators. Now, there's a big difference. People want coaching, correct. They want good coaching. If the coaching's bad or the person delivering it is poor, they're going to resist it. All right. So you need buy-in. You either need to be charismatic or excellent at your job, or show results quickly that are tangible in forms of results, right? Which can then relate to commissions, hitting your targets, promotions, all these sorts of things. If you're getting good results quickly with your coaching, you get buy-in and they like you as a person, it's going to work. If you're a bad coach or you're in that position for the wrong reasons, then it doesn't work. Coaching is ineffective. It's actually going to be counterproductive. But any coaching is better than no coaching at the right level. And it's not necessarily the manager. Right, you mentioned the managers need coaching, correct? Right? If the manager's trained as a good coach, that's great. But the manager sometimes is not the best coach. The manager might be good at managing people, but not good at coaching people. Just like the top salesperson might not be a great manager. All right, like some of the top teams, especially in the States, might have a fantastic manager, but they also have a fantastic coach. It might be someone completely different. The best sales coach could be the person sat next to you. The best sales coach could be someone who's done your job and has moved roles into another area, but he still retains that knowledge because it requires a different skill set. All right. So the first things first, you need to work out who the right person for the role is, and make sure the coaching is correct. Show some tangible benefits to the people you're coaching. That in turn will drive results.
So you're talking about results. What's really interesting is you said you could be good or you could be bad. It's just one factor about outperforming your competition. So again, on that front, results, reps, these are the stats, folks. Reps reporting to great managers deliver 4 times more revenue than those working for poor managers. Ashley, have you seen that when you're talking? I mean, I'm assuming you've had staff turnover. It's a natural thing. You talk to a lot of people at all the AISP events. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah. I mean, I actually just worked with one of our senior leaders, and she was talking about this exactly. In her career, she didn't have a good manager. They didn't set her up for success at all. Wasn't there to help out. She brought problems to the table and really always said they didn't have time for her. And she obviously left. And we hear this constantly. You have to have, I say, a good manager in place. And maybe they're not the coach, but they have to do some coaching, because you have to have that connection. I feel everywhere I've worked, and a lot of our reps that have worked for us, you have to have a good connection with your team. You are a team. It's like in football. If you don't connect with that coach and they're not helping you, what's your success rate?
Yeah.
Steve,
the thing is, look, where I stand with this is like, I'm a sales manager. I'm a salesperson who can manage and also train. That's what I am. Now, a percentage of people who have worked under me over the last amount of time might think I'm a terrible manager, because I'm not for everybody. But I've also got a percentage who think I'm an excellent manager. All right. So the individual also has to take ownership of their coaching. Once again, we look to a person to coach, but also we should be self-learning. We should be self-coaching and criticizing our performance and moving forward and asking for help. Too many people are coming into the workplace looking to be spoon-fed some form of management or coaching. All right. But you've got to be self-motivated around these things. Yes, a charismatic, pragmatic manager is going to drive some great results, but not in every single person. All right. So you've got to set up your workplace to have a variety of different coaching methods that are going to appeal to different people, because some people don't want to work under a manager. Some people want to be a lone ranger and go off out there hunting all day long and don't want to be touched. Right. And we understand these people, and these people, you got to then provide them with different ways of coaching themselves.
Now, what's interesting there, Steve, is that you've talked about, there's a variety of ways of coaching. Right away, the alarm bells go off on my selfish, point of view, which is I don't have time to be doing a variety of ways. I barely have time to do it one way as a sales manager. And what's really counterintuitive is that done right, there's a minimal commitment required. So again, what do the stats say? They say managers only need to spend 3 or more hours a month to influence those objectives. It doesn't actually take as much commitment as you think. Has that been your experience, Steve?
Well, firstly, we keep going back to the same point. We're assuming the manager is the coach. Okay, it depends on the size of the organization. If you've got 100 sales staff and you're turning over, millions and millions and millions and millions, you can have internal sales coaches working for your organization who might not necessarily be the manager. The manager can be a stakeholder in making sure the delivery is correct, and obviously feeding back and using the data to help drive where the coaching is necessary. But you have to make a culture within your organization. If you've got 5 people in your organization and the manager's got a sales target, they might turn around and say, I don't have enough time to coach. I don't have enough time to coach. But you can break that down and use a strategy of doing small areas of coaching based on what you're getting from the data and how to drive results. But you need to create a culture where the sales coaches can be anyone within the organization, anyone with knowledge within the organization. Like I said, some of the best coaches I'm working with are actually the people doing the job on a daily basis, because just like anyone, you could be someone who's fantastic at basketball 30 years ago and you can manage a team, but then suddenly you get some kid 14 years old who's dribbling around and dunking on you because you're out of the game. You're not learning. The game's evolving continuously. How we do things is evolving continuously, and we can have to evolve we coach based on the individual and the situation in the organization. We do that by looking at the data. We do that by working back from the targets and working at a bespoke specific plan. But if you create a culture within your organization where you've got team leaders coaching, you've got people who's sitting next to you coaching, you've got junior members creating feedback, you've got internal sharing of knowledge and best practices, you can then set up something that everyone has access to and take the bits they need. Okay, and then with a higher level of coaching from a more senior person.
All right, I'm going to segue over to the next slide here, which is pretty straightforward, but I love this because it builds upon what Steve is talking to here, which is it's only as hard as you make it. So what I'm hearing Steve say is that the burden can be distributed across the organization if you instill that culture. It's not just upon the sales manager, which is really important. Of course, though, Steve, I'll push back a little bit on you and say you're putting a lot of faith in the fact that the entire organization is coaching well and is coaching consistently. So what's your response to that?
That's why you have some quality control in place, right? At the end of the day, you can create a best practice within the organization, which you teach in the induction, you teach from through your training, then you enforce and develop through coaching. But if all the people have come through at the same standardized level, and then they're coming through to develop into team leaders, and you have that culture, that the coaching is going to be fed back. And obviously from a higher level, you're looking at the data, you're looking at the objectives, and you're passing that information down, and then coaching's getting tweaked. Again, it's dependent on the size of the organization. If you've got 3 people and you can speak to them on a daily basis, you've got a personal relationship with them, you can have some more one-on-one coaching. But if you've got 1,000 people in your sales team, it's a little bit different. That's why you have to create a set of rules or best practices in place for your organization that everyone has access to. Then that quality has to be monitored across the organization from top to bottom based on your strategy. But again, we keep assuming there's one best fit case for every single company and organization and person, which is incorrect, because your manager could be a tyrannical dictator like me and he's not really great at soft skills, or you could have someone who's fantastic at soft skills but is terrible at relaying and delivering results and getting information or understanding how to use multiple methods. So if you've got a large organization, provide multiple tools and resources for people to be coached on. It might be an audio file, it might be a video, it might be an intranet with all best practices shared on there, what people have learned from the information. It might be a series of coaching seminars. It might be talking in your morning meeting for 5 minutes. It might be reports based on the data you receive. All these things can be done. If you're on a smaller level, it will fall upon the stakeholders who are working there on a daily basis. But again, let's not make the assumption it's a one size fits all solution. It's not.
And I agree with you. Can I add in here?
Yeah, because I'm watching you nod your head yes and no to everything he says.
So I agree with everything. And I don't think it should be solely on the manager. I think the manager has to do some coaching just to be, have that kind of open door policy. And you should feel comfortable going to your manager or someone within your organization, whether it's their boss. I think the directors and the VPs also need to be a part of it and making sure they're hitting their teams. And now every organization is different. I mean, we work with thousands of sales teams across the globe, and some are enterprise, some are mid-market and SMB. And I mean, we see a huge differentiator on how they do their coaching. Some hire enablement teams and have them help with that. Some do it internally, some do it externally. But I mean, as my team, I mean, we're a small team. We're about 4 or 5 people here right now on our sales team. And we take all the data and best practices we learned from our leaders in our association and kind of put it into place. We want to be best in class too. I think everybody does. And I don't think everybody knows what's wrong. You need to figure out what works for you. And I think, but having a coaching plan integrated in, it's going to help your team progress. It's going to help each individual progress and feel like you as the leaders care about them and their growth. And I mean, it's still a journey for us here. I mean, we're still measuring different things, but we do some pretty cool things here, and it makes our team feel really special, like we are a team, and it's not just Joe over here and Mary over here. We work as a team. We help each other out. And one thing we've actually implemented is the peer-to-peer coaching too, because that's huge. We each have our own strengths. We all have our areas of development. Well, why not tap into those with each person? You're strong here. Let's help the rest of the team here. You're strong here. Let's help these guys, right? That's how we kind of do it and how we have done it. And it's worked very well.
All right, I got to ask a question. I've heard you both use the terms focus on the objectives. I've heard you both talk about being data-driven. It's certainly a points we're making on the slide. Steve, what do you mean? Like when you say that, like what? That's an easy statement to make, but what does that mean?
Well, I go back to this. This team sports thing, and maybe because I've got this headset on, I feel like I'm an American football coach or something. Like shouting.
You need your tablet at the same time though for that.
Go Packers!
Or I'm going to land a plane or something. But, look. If you look at the really successful teams, they're going to use data, right? You look at a fighter. Someone gets knocked out. They're going to go back, watch the tape. They're going to work out what happened. They're going to put an effective strategy in place. Now, if you're getting insights and data from, it could just be like, let's look at calls as an example. If you're getting calls and you're getting data around a certain person is getting a certain amount of no's at a certain stage, you can then go and analyze the data. You can go and analyze the calls. You can listen to where the issues are, then give effective coaching. Otherwise, you're just going to give broad brushstrokes. Now that can just be like a quick fix. You just go out there and just train everyone to a certain level, coach everyone to a certain level, but not everyone needs the same amount of coaching at the same time. So you've got to use the data to make sure you're in line with your objectives, because too many managers look at a number and they're tasked on a number, and if they're not hitting that number, they panic, and it's like, let's just make more calls or get more reps or sell more stuff. Okay, that's great, but it could be that the average deal value needs to increase. It could be that they're losing a certain amount of deals at a tender process, or it could be they're not getting enough opportunities into the funnel. So you've got to use the data to see where you need to apply the coaching, because not everyone needs the same coaching at the same time. So you're wasting a lot of time by telling people stuff they already know, and you're missing out on opportunities to grow and succeed. If you're not, you're just working blind basically. So use your data, and if you can't get data, you better invest in something that's going to give you some data, because it's no longer nice to have. It's a necessity. All right, so that's something you should be looking at depending on your budget. Okay, so yeah, use your data, work smarter, not harder. And like I say, all good sports teams are going to do it, so why should not all sales teams?
Well said. All right, so let's move on to the next slide, because we're 25 minutes past the hour. We want to get through everything here. Next one is very straightforward. It's who should be doing the coaching. Now, I know you think we may have covered this already, because both Steve and Ashley I spoke to the fact that, there needs to be not just the manager. Steve particularly beat me up on that, and I'm still crying over it. But it's also the entire organization. Ashley talked about peer-to-peer. My question's different. My question is, do I do what they're saying, which is go inside, or do I say, we don't have the skill here, or we don't have the start of a program here. We need to bring in an external expert. So let me go back to Ashley first and say, have you had this discussion either at the AISP, or have you had this conversation amongst your peers in the industry, and what's the take on the pros and cons?
So I've heard both. Internally, us here at the association, obviously, we have so many amazing members we can tap into that are always help. Everyone wants to help everybody out. That's what's great about being part of this community. But we do everything internally or tap into our member community. We do work with a lot of companies that have to go external. One, maybe because of the size of their teams, they just can't do it, especially when you have like 1,000 sales reps across the globe, I mean, you have to look at what you can feasibly do. It can get expensive. I've heard it works great. I've heard, though, it can also create a disconnect, too, from the teams. But, I mean, I'm a huge proponent with trying to figure out how to do it internally because it keeps your teams closer.
Now, Steve, I definitely want your role because I would imagine, as you know, being the sales trainer that you are over many years with much success, and I'm assuming the occasional failure like we all have, you know, is it better off to bring an outside person in to help you get that program kickstarted, or are you better off to go inside? And I'll float something before you respond. Statistically, the research shows that most reps will actually feel more comfortable discussing their issues, their concerns, their challenges with an external coach. So I'm putting it out there, Steve.
Right. So first things first. I'm a salesperson who manages, who happens to be good at training. Right.
Yes,
so I
fair
understand
enough. You're
it I understand it from different aspects. Okay. So my first bit of advice is probably just get in contact with me and hire me to come in and sort your team out. Right. So
that's brilliant.
That's going to solve. That's really the be all and end all of it. That's going to solve your problems. But again, there's no yes or no answer. There's no short answer to this because it depends on the circumstances of your team. It depends on the skills you have at hand. Okay, if you're looking at your team and you have a person there who's a fantastic coach, who happens to also be your manager, who happens to also be your best salesperson, who's so organized they can hit the target with 10 hours left in the week to, you know, get them coaching your staff, all right? Because they know your staff, they've got a personal relationship with your staff, they can all work together and bond as a team. Also, that little bit of attention can help them, you know, pick out really micro parts what they can have an ongoing effect on. But if you've not got that luxury, your managers don't want to coach, or they don't have time to coach, or they say they don't have time to coach, and there's some resistance on those lines, or your manager is just a terrible coach and is actually doing more harm than good, then and you have to bring in an external sales trainer. If you're going to do it, bring them on, invested as part of your team over a period of time. Don't just bring them in for a short period and say, thanks very much, that was great, off you go, here's your report, see you next year, because that's not going to work, right? Get them invested in your team as part of your team, and have that ongoing, because that will work as well. Because like you say, sometimes people don't like the sales manager. Sometimes people hate the sales manager. They don't want to work with that person, or they want the person's job half the time. So you're not getting the same results. So, and a person who's objective, who doesn't get involved in any of the politics, could sometimes be a neutral factor who can really uncover a lot of stones. There's no ego involved in or there might not be any conflict. Sometimes the sales manager's got a conflict with an internal. They're not performing. The internal believes that it's the manager's fault, all these sorts of things. So you can't use the manager. So then you're going to have to bring in an external person. So it really depends on the situation, what you're looking to achieve. However, if you are best case solution, use your internal resource if you've got the time and someone who's great at it. If you're going to bring somebody in, make sure it's a long-term engagement and they can be part of your company, invested in making you grow in your targets.
All right, I'm going to throw a bombshell at you. You guys haven't seen this coming. On the slide, we shared this fact that the average sales manager, and I know it's just the manager we're talking about here, not the whole team, devotes just 20% of their time to coaching. Steve, you said you're a salesperson who manages a team who happens to be good at training. With that, how much time do you spend in your schedule coaching your team?
Once again, you don't have to break it down into just a small time frame. Like, we're going to do half an hour's coaching today. That's not what it's about. It's a continuous process. So you could be making some calls. You could hear somebody. You could offer a bit of advice, or maybe even some constructive criticism. You could have a look. Someone could be down. You might have to take them to one side, sit them down, do a one-on-one. Something might crop up on your radar. It has to be reactive. Yes, have your heavy scheduled times, but sometimes you don't need coaching. Sometimes someone's on a hot streak. You don't want to take them away from what they're doing. Or we need to give you some scheduled coaching today. Why? I'm about to hit my target. It's the end of the month. It's the end of the year, right? So it's a continuous thing. So work it into how you behave, not your schedule. If you want to put some fixed time in your diary that you're going to adhere to, and you know, put it in there. But don't put it in there and then discount all the coaching should be doing ongoing.
I agree with that. I think, you know, having that open door to your team and whoever needs you. I mean, I have some of my team come to me all times during the day asking, hey, I just reached out to this person struggling here, any suggestions? And then we talk about what they did. I almost you know, even when we do coach, we open it up. Like, I don't try to figure out what their issue is. I try to have them figure out what their issue or what they're having challenges with when they're reaching out or whatever they may be doing with that potential prospect. But I think the open door policy is huge. I think scheduling time, I try to do once a week with each person. And obviously I keep it tentative on the calendar, because if they're deep in the midst of calling and hitting their numbers and they're just flying through it, I don't want to take them off of that. So I keep it open, but we do meet once a week. We've actually even started doing, well, we use different technologies. I know we'll be talking about that, but reviewing calls. And we do monthly call contests. We're going to be, we also feature like a library of like the best calls. And we actually even use that part of our onboarding too, which is pretty cool. Peer-to-peer coaching, we do, coaching scorecards as well as part of our monthly of what we're doing as a team. But I mean, we're always connecting, always.
All right. So I'm going to segue to the next logical I guess, shall we say, extension of this conversation, which is we were talking a little bit about, how much time should we put in. And while I did notice that neither of you actually gave me a number, and I'm not letting you off that, you did share that, it's part of your routine. All right. But let's back it up for our audience who perhaps don't have that rigor, that discipline yet. The question is, how often should you coach, which is how we framed it, but really is, if I was to, let's say I'm not coaching or I'm not coaching well right now and I'm having a moment of honesty. I am a sales manager. I know that I'm guilty of not coaching well. I know that I have not instilled a company culture of getting all the SDRs working together in that peer-to-peer fashion, or other influencers in the organization to influence the training. The question I guess I have to you is, how do I start? All right, so how do I start the process? Steve, over to you.
Well, I've been in this situation before. I've been in this situation where, I've entered companies or I've started in a company, and this has been the case. And how I would start is by talking to each individual and finding out, or if there's a massive organization, interact with the people, find out how they'd want some coaching, where their issues are, get a feel for where the problems are and how people would like to be coached. And then put that plan into action. And if you've only got limited time frames, like I say, I have a morning meeting every morning. I'll offer coaching right there and then, 5 minutes, some little bits from what we've learned from the day before. We open it up and you start that culture. You start that culture of feedback. Buy people into it, because if people are thinking that they're heard and their ideas are being brought to the table, they're more likely to share. Base your coaching strategy around that. Because if you just come in and just start putting coaching in place without knowing what the issues are, without knowing what people are receptive to, people are going to resist it. All right, so you got to put it in place. Once you know what you're going to do, once you've sort of bought into the people starting to slowly buy into that culture, you put something more formal in place and start driving it.
Ashley?
I agree with that. One of the things I think is huge is, as we've been onboarding some new teammates over here, is really asking them, what do they like to do? Finding out, do you like to have weekly meetings? Do you like monthly? What do you like? Every person, we need to understand that even though we're a team, we're all different, and we all like to be coached in different ways. Some like through video, some like just chatting me. I mean, we look at everything across the board. Some like it as a team group effort. How do they like to be coached, I think, is a key thing, and just asking.
So I love that. And it sounds stupid, but you're actually just getting input from them, which actually really lends their, I guess, buy-in, for lack of a better word, to be part of that conversation, so that when you then start executing on it, it works really, really well. So I'm a big fan of that. Let me ask this next question. I'm going to frame it out there, and then I'm going to go back to Steve first, and then Ashley. So when we were researching the stats for this, I found this one stat I thought was pretty cool. We called it the Goldilocks effect. But that is the following. Tell me if this resonates. Managers will often spend most of their time working with the bottom 20% because they need the most help, and the top 20% because that's, they're having success. What can we learn from them? Now, while that sounds logical, the challenge with that is that means that the middle 60% are getting no love. And that's kind of critical because the top performers are already top performers. And the other part to that is that the bottom 20%, they're probably unlikely to improve. They just might be a bad fit. They may not be here for the long term because this isn't a career for them. They don't have the right stuff for this career. So I guess the question I would ask you is, how do you figure out who to focus on? Who do you focus on, Steve?
I think I'll probably been a bit guilty in that. And I fall into those stats myself because I like to sort of root for the underdog. Sometimes people I take a privilege and going to a really underperforming person, turning around and getting a win, right? So that's probably a little bit of ego on my side there, trying to turn someone around. But when you're looking to hit targets, you've got to look at the resource you've got at hand and use your time effectively. All right. So if you've got a middle pack of 60% who are not far off targets, there might be some very small slight tweaks you can do in coach in order to get them over the next level. So yeah, you probably get the best results delivering coaching to the 60% who are not getting the most coaching. So you need to identify that. You need to identify that, and you need to look at those bottom performers, and then really look at it and see is this a problem with recruitment, because people shouldn't be coming in and performing to that level to start off with. So you need to have a more effective recruitment strategy in order to make sure people who come in are getting inducted quicker and performing to a high level, and get more of those people into the middle pack to allow you to spend more time with those people instead of rooting for the bottom performers.
Ashley, if you say I agree with him, I'm going to slap you.
No, I'm just wondering where you got this research, because I actually, within a lot of our sales leaders, I hear the opposite. They focus on the 20% in the middle, and they don't focus at all on their top performers. They just let them go.
Well,
and
that sounds like you're saying the same thing, though, right? I mean, so I would suggest the people you're talking to are actually wise, right? They're doing what they should be doing. They're focusing on the ones in the middle. The research we found out was that a lot of people are actually doing the other extreme ends. That's all. So I think instead of agreeing with Steve, you're agreeing with me. Is that what I'm hearing here you say here, Ashley?
I don't know about that.
No. You're both agreeing with me, I think. And I don't blame you. Right. So, but like I said, you can be tempted as a sales coach to go in and try and, have a bit of empathy for the person struggling and try and bring them up to speed. That's a nice thing to do. And I do like to do that myself. But, please make sure you pay good attention to that middle 60% or, the fair to middle people, because they're the people who are going to get the best results off immediately.
All right. So let's go on to the next point I want to talk about, which is what's the best method to coach? Now, what do we mean by that? We've already hit on some of this a little bit about, peer-to-peer and, opportunistically, blah, blah, blah. That's actually not what I'm talking about here. Think of this more as a stylistic statement, all right? How do you coach? In other words, we've got some things here about ask, don't tell, offer rewards, offer recognition. In other words, from a style point of view, when it comes to training, what are the mistakes you should avoid and what are the best practices you should implement? Let's carry on what we've been doing. Steve, I'll let you go first.
Well, again, I think one of the things we're sort of failing with here is being too generic. We're being too generic in what we're talking about, right?
Then get specific.
You can't turn around and say, oh, this is the best method this is the best. If you have effective recruitment and you know your people, you're going to work out what's the best way to get the results out of them by coaching, because each individual responds differently. Some people within my team, let's just talk about some of my team specifically, they like a firm, hard, fair approach. They want honest feedback, and that encourages them to get better. Some people are purely motivated by putting an incentive in behind a coaching plan. If they hit it, they drive it. Some people can't take any criticism whatsoever and will start crying as soon as I look at them, right? So you've got to know your team, and you've got to know how to get the best out of your team. And if you're working with an external coach, you've got to provide those profiles before you start your plan. All right. Me personally, I'm a big believer in providing a variety, and I keep going back to this, a variety of different methods, because each person will gravitate to the method that works for them, whether it's an audio file, a video, a one-on-one session, a group session, whether it's feedback, whether it's call recordings, whether it's giving someone a rollicking. All these things are going to affect people in different ways. And the problem with this industry, the problem with coaching as a whole, is people come in and it's too generic. It's too generic. So look at your team, work out what's worked before for you, work out the profile of the individual, and coach accordingly. Coach accordingly. That's my advice. If you've got a small team, I believe all managers have got time. I believe if you've got some coaching experience, you've got time, and it should be coming from the stakeholders down. If you're working on it with a massive team, you've got to work with maybe an external sales coach, house sales coaches brought in specifically, and work with the management to put these things in place to facilitate success.
All right. I'm talking to you, Ashley, but I'm calling.
Yes.
I'm calling. Well, what Steve said was wonderful and true. I'm calling BS on Steve because he's making a statement that, this is stupid. That of course you're gonna adapt to the individual and do what you want. So the reason I'm calling BS on Steve is because he himself talked about tyrannical managers, if I recall, was one of the words he used.
Yep.
So Ashley, have you ever had a bad coach?
Oh, that's a good question.
Come on, I'm from Vanilla
Yes,
Soft.
I have.
So then, but Steve just said that that's silly. But you've had a bad coach.
Oh, I have. It's the ones that they make time for you, but they don't make time for you.
All right, so talk to me about that.
Meaning, well, I'm sitting here in this session with you right now. I turned everything off. But what happened when my coaching session is they had everything on and were distracted by everything going on. So that's one thing that did not work. If you are going to coach your team, you need to turn off everything. Put your phone away, make it about the person you're with. And that's where my coaching went bad.
Steve, what's your reaction to that?
Well, look, I've had bad coaches in the past. I've been a bad coach in the past. I didn't start off good at coaching. I had to learn. And some people will still say I'm a bad coach. You can't win everybody over. Some people might say I'm a terrible coach, but I get some good results out of the majority of people I work with. And so one of the biggest mistakes I've made in the past is try to coach people to the level I think they need to be at to hit my targets, where we should be facilitating people or giving people the knowledge for them to hit their targets that in turn hit your targets. So everyone has to buy into it, and you got to play for your team. You got to coach for your team's better. The individuals benefit, and in turn they're going to work for you. So that's my advice. And like I said, I've been a bad coach. I've been a do and maybe not practice what I preach mentality, and I've been all that sort of stuff, and I've made mistakes in the past, and I still make mistakes now, usually when I've had about 5 coffees. But you got to remember, this is true. Sales coaches don't drink too much coffee, but you got to understand the individual and actually have an eager desire, an honest desire to help that person achieve what you need to achieve. If you're authentic and you've got genuine intentions, you will get the best out of people. If in turn those people will help you hit your targets, help the organization hit their goals, they'll be invested in their team, and you'll work together and you'll win stuff, and you'll get where you need to be. If you're doing it for the wrong reasons and you've got the wrong agenda at heart, be honest with yourself, change what you need to do, or just get out of the job and go do something else. Go and be a barman or something.
All right, so then...
can I just add something in here?
Ah, fine.
I have to. Come on.
Go for it.
I also think, being a manager, that manager needs to be out on the floors hearing everything, because I've also seen managers that kind of stay in their little area, aren't seeing what their reps are doing, and when they do the coaching, they give them advice or help guide them, and I'm like, okay, that's so old school. You're not on the floors with these people. What is going on? You can't do that. Our profession is constantly evolving, and I think it's huge to make sure that the managers are listening to calls, tapping into that, being open and having that open environment to hear what the different processes are doing. One of the things we talk about every week on our all team meeting call is, let's talk about one thing each of you did last week that maybe it was an email, and whatever you put in that email, it got that person responded immediately, or maybe it was a voicemail or a phone call. What stood out that was unique that you normally don't do in your process? Let's share it with the team, because it worked. If it works, why wouldn't you share it with the rest of the team? I
agree, and that's the peer point that I know you guys have both made. Let me ask you this though, Ashley, you're talking about how the manager who doesn't walk the floor and therefore perhaps is not in the best position to give coaching advice because of that lack of familiarity, that lack of exposure. Isn't that the purpose of call recordings? Does that say that I do not have to walk the show floor, the sales floor, because I have technology and I can listen to everything?
Can I just jump in here?
Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
It's going to help. It's not going to replace walking the floor, because you can't see people's body language. You can't see people. You can't see if someone's got a black eye. You can't see if someone's hungover. You can't see if someone's about to jump out the window because they're depressed. You can't see any of these things when you listen to a call recording. Okay, call recording is going to help you. It's going to allow you to coach, but walking the floor and being in touch with your team and seeing what's happening, and it doesn't have to be every day, it could be at some point, is going to enable you to make those decisions. Body language and that sort of one-on-one interaction, even if it's just a joke or a bit of sarcasm or something, is going to allow you to really make an estimation on how people are feeling on any given day. Because if someone's had a bad performance, listen to the call recordings are bad, it's easy to say they're underperforming or they need upskilling, but the girlfriend could have just done them that day, so you need to be walking around and knowing what's going on.
So call recording is a huge thing that I use. One, because my whole team is remote. We do get together quite a bit throughout the year with different events that we do here at the association, but everything we do is remote. So I wholeheartedly utilize the call recording 100%. And the technology we use, we record the scheduled meetings, which all of my team's scheduled meetings have to be through Zoom. So we get to see how they're acting, what their temperament is, like what, I always make sure where you dress for success, because you're showing yourself you're showing that person, even if they didn't share their video. But then we also use it for unscheduled calls, whether they're using an acceleration tool or platform. We utilize that as well. And I will tell you, those are huge. And we share our bad calls. We share our good calls. We laugh at the bad calls and it's fun. We make it fun.
So let me ask this question I've not asked either one of you, which is, we talked about this. Do rewards work, or does recognition work? Any tidbits or advice or counsel, do this, don't do that you can share with those people listening, looking to get that pearl of wisdom that they can apply to their own circumstances?
Mine, Steve? If I jump in? Okay. Yeah. So I definitely think rewards and recognition work. I think you have to have different things in place, but every individual is different. Some people may like contests where they get a Starbucks card, or they get a day off, or get to work from home. Others like money. You just need to figure out what the team likes. And that's a conversation that you have with each individual, but we're a sales team. We're aggressive. Not all aggressive, but we like to be competitive. So I think those road and recognition programs are always great to have in place. We do weekly spiffs. We do random spiffs throughout the month. We make it up as we go, and we make it fun. That's what people want to have fun at what they do as well.
So you're saying it works. Is that what I'm hearing you say? It's not just working effectively to generate results, but it's also establishing a culture within your organization.
Correct.
Steve.
Right, yeah. Use short-term, long-term spiffs. Use whatever you want to do. Look, but don't overuse spiffs, because if people become reliant on it to hit a target, as soon as you remove it, they're going to underperform. Okay, a little bit like a child who cries every time you want to give it a chocolate bar, and you don't give it a chocolate bar and starts screaming. You're going to create a monster. So be careful how you use your incentives, because it's going to drive a short-term goal. Okay, but it might create a long-term problem. And also, don't overuse them. Don't overuse the same thing over again, because the efficacy will decline. Sometimes the most simple spiffs are the most effective. It could be a cup of tea, it could be a sausage roll, it could be a go home early target. It doesn't have to. It could be a recognition. It could be able to wear you close to work when everyone else has to wear a uniform. It could be a holiday, whatever it may be. Sometimes the small things work better than the larger things, and sometimes recognition works better than everything. But sometimes there'll just be that crazy person in the office who just wants cold hard cash. So use everything, but don't overuse it, and don't let people abuse it.
Wow. I'll tell you too, just having the VP, if you have your manager and then their boss even coming up to you and saying, "Wow, Ashley, good job." I mean, that means a lot. First off, oh my gosh, that he knows my name or she knows my name is just awesome. And he's recognizing me. Stuff like that even feels good. I think you need to really recognize your people, know them by name. Even if your company is big, even if you head up a 1,000-person inside sales team, you should be at least recognizing that person, I would say, throughout the year, once a year, even having a meeting with them.
So then
or talking to them.
How come every time we have a conversation, Ashley, on the phone, you always call me George? I don't get that. It just doesn't make sense to me. All right. So the last one we want to talk about is, how can technology help you implement, manage, measure, monitor, reward all of this? Now, of course, I would be, how do I put this? I would be a bad marketer and sales representative if I didn't acknowledge that, hey, I work at VanillaSoft, and sales engagement is a big part of that. So that's the plug. I'm done. But guys, let me ask you this. And I'm going to go to Ashley first, because you mentioned it recently. You said technology. You use it. What are some of the technology pieces that you're using to make your life better?
Yeah, well, technology is a huge thing. And obviously, you don't want to overdo your sales stack or your technology stack within the sales team, because it's going to get too messy. But I will tell you, the sales acceleration tools is a must with your teams. VanillaSoft's a great one. And we wholeheartedly support them and think they're amazing. I also think that the coaching, we use the coaching tool, like the Gongs and the Exec Visions out there, and they are a game changer, especially for us since my team's all remote. But I mean, it's just, it creates fun when you actually take those calls and showcase it. We also even take the best calls, as I mentioned earlier, and we use it as part of onboarding for our new team members to utilize and hear what other reps have been doing that have been successful. So, I mean, it comes into play in different areas.
Steve.
Simply for me, it's time and data. Time and data. Number one thing people say why they can't coach: have no time. Okay, that's the biggest excuse. One of the reasons why people ineffectively coach is because they're doing the wrong thing. So if you've got more time to coach and you've got data to drive your coaching off the back of, you're going to be more successful. So if you're using a sales acceleration software, and someone told me this VanillaSoft thing's pretty good, right? So if you're using something like that, it's going to give you more time to coach, and it's going to give you more effective data to coach from. So how can that not be a useful tool? How can that not help your business? You know, if everyone wants to ask a question on that, feel free at the end. But I can't see why that's not going to be a benefit. So you just got to weigh up your budget, your costs, and where you want to be. Try and get it into your budget in some form, because it's going to save you time and give you better data to train from and to coach from.
What I love about the technology side, candidly, because we use many of the same tools you guys use, the voice, everything else, is that it's empirical, right? There it is, guys. So when I tell you need to do this differently, well, here's the results. Here's what the technology is showing us, demonstrating, conveying. See, you can see that. It's no different, carrying on Steve's analogy of a sports team, of them sitting on the sidelines with a tablet looking at a replay in real time. They can see where they made a mistake so they don't do that again. That's the beauty of technology. So let's kind of recap here. What have we learned here? Reps want to be coached. Damn it. So oblige them. It does not have to be painful. I think if you listen to what both Steve and Ashley said, nowhere along the way there did I hear a heavy sighing going, oh, coaching. Oh, how much time do we have? Do you mind, Daryl, if I open up the whiskey behind me here so that we can actually, just console me? Use data. I've heard data over and over and over again. You probably didn't realize you're coming to a coaching session that data would be so prominent, but use data to not only identify the problems, but to monitor and measure how you track on improving them. Focus on your core performers. That, as Ashley was saying, the middle 20% or the middle 60%, those are the ones you want to work on. Ask. It's a style thing. Ask, don't tell. You heard Ashley talk about how she asks them, how do you want to be trained? How do you want to be coached and encouraged? And then don't be afraid to leverage software to make your life easier. So that's the scoop there. Now we're going to go back to the questions. So let's advance the slide a little bit, because we do have a couple questions in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the actual this slide up here, and I'm going to go back to our presenters here right now, because what I want you to see is physically we've got their email addresses, their LinkedIn contact information, all that stuff right there on the screen so that you can see it. And of course, if you don't see it right now, maybe you're on a small screen, you're on a tablet, you're on your phone watching this, you can't see it, not to worry. We will provide all the contact information when we send this out to you afterwards. But I'm encouraging you strongly to do two things right now for your own improvement, your own self-education, your own coaching. Follow Steve. Follow Ashley. These two people are all over LinkedIn. That's where they play most of the time. Yes, they're on Twitter and other places too, but that's where they're at. They're also quite prolific at a number of events in the various regions. So if you have a chance to see them speak, please do so. Don't miss out on that. That's what you need to do. They're strong that way. Now, we do have some questions. I'm going to ask this in no particular order. Here we go. How do you handle situations where the sales manager thinks that they are a rock star trainer, but in reality, they're freaking horrible? What do you do?
Over to you on that one, because probably people think that about me.
Oh, yeah. So I've actually heard this in our community quite a bit. They've done kind of blinded assessments on the team. So across the sales team, I've heard this from a couple of different organizations that are part of the association. And these blind assessments ask various questions around individual managers, around the leadership team, around the reps, and people can be as open as possible. And it has turned things kind of upside down, but it has also helped if you take it, obviously, not as a bad thing, but as a way to help your team. So that's one thing I've heard that a lot of our members have done.
Any feedback from you, Steve? Because I would think you would know this, being so bad yourself. You could speak to your experiences.
To be honest with you, I'm going to pass on that one. You know, I don't want to give away information that could be used against me.
All right. Well then, let me come back to you, Steve, on another question we have, which is, how do you convince, let's call it influential people in the organization? Perhaps it's a CEO. That we need to invest in coaching, whether it's in-house tools like call recording or voice analysis or external advisors. But they don't believe so. They're not there. How do you convince them the merits of this?
Well, you've got to go and present it in line with their goals and objectives and how it's going to help them reach where they need to be. Because ultimately people need to buy into it for their own reasons, right? So if they've got a target to hit, or they've got a revenue target they need to achieve, if it's going to help them get there, and you can make it just like any salesperson is going to have to go and pitch a product in there, you're going to have to go and pitch for it. All right. So put it in line with the goals and objectives of the senior person or the tyrannical manager. They will happily then leave that ego at the door if it's going to benefit them moving forward.
Can I just add something in there? A lot of these providers, too, will allow you to test out their technology and kind of beta test it. I think that is huge. If you can do that, especially some of these call coaching, like the Gongs and Exec Visions out there, test it out, have some of your reps test it out, bring the data to your CEO and show them.
So basically, your point is you can make a kick-ass business case to physically justify the investment. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say. And which is actually really good advice, because it's hard to argue with that when you've got the results right there. So I love that. So with that said, I'm going to say thank you to my fine guests here. So Steve, thank you so much from beautiful across the pond. Whereabouts are you right now, dude?
London. So
you
I'm
are
on the
London.
River Thames. I'm on the
I
River
love
Thames,
London.
Oh, you're on the Thames. I love the Thames. I grew up on the Thames. I don't know if you know that, and it wasn't the London Thames.
Didn't know that.
Very
Didn't know
different
that.
Thames. Small. It was not pretty. And Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun. Steve, I'll be connecting with you later.
So,
Great, feel free.
guys.
All right.
Guys and gals, follow Ashley's lead and follow Steve. Or, even better, follow Ashley. And if you're really desperate to get some traction, follow me. We're all on LinkedIn. In the meantime, I am so grateful. Check out more at vanillasoft.com. We hope you enjoyed Coach to Close. Boost your team's performance. We'll talk to you soon. You take care, folks. Bye-bye.